Hi, good morning. First, let me get through the housekeeping. Let me start with the land acknowledgement. The Native American Indian cultures who have lived on this land that I call my home in Burlington County, New Jersey, USA, include the Unami Lenape or Banties, part of the Lenape culture whose descendants were pushed from the area and are living in Oklahoma. Various other members of the Delawares and the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape who are currently living in New Jersey. The Native American Indian cultures had and continue to have a profound respect of and a commitment to the earth and its inhabitants. My name is Denise McCormack. I use story elements as guideposts to find richer meaning and direction in my life. I have a background in education, an MED, and then some, built on a foundation in English literature, language, and learning, and complement it with research in science, folklore, and other areas that bolster my understanding of cultures and the humanities. I've been a professional storyteller for about 2 decades. Most recently, I've been involved in humanities projects which focus on the discovery and presentation of stories, create narratives in video production and web design, and I'm writing a book on the impact of technology and storytelling. I've been a key player on the boards of various arts organizations. One of them, which I am beholden to mention, is Patchwork. Patchwork is a storytelling guild, a 501c3 established in 1984, and it's still thriving. Its mission is simple, and I quote, Patchwork promotes storytelling as a vibrant contemporary art form, as well as a folk tradition, a way of celebrating life, and a tool for personal and social transformation. Our vision is to enable storytellers a forum to make complex ideas plain and meaningful through the art of storytelling, to highlight that similarities outweigh differences among people and cultures, and to forge paths to informed and humane decision making. And as you'll see, today's workshop, Exploring Stories Through Critical Lenses, focuses on those tenets of reflection and discovery. Today, we're going to, one, look at the scope of critical lenses, and two, apply critical lenses to familiar stories. In a nutshell, we will analyze and discuss prose and poetry through critical lenses for contextual insight and hopefully make plain the powerful and subversive nature of storytelling. Now, why is this important? Because revealing such observations can support our missions to serve justice in a compelling way through relatable, meaningful stories that inspire empathy and action. Before we get started, I'd like each person here to give their 30-second elevator pitch, a quick introduction of who you are, where you are, and what role storytelling plays for you. And since I can see you, Eric, would you mind setting the stage and modeling a nice introduction of yourself so everyone knows who you are?
Yes. Well, I live in South India now for the last 20 years, but I'm very much still a young boy living in New York City, where I grew up, going to the theater almost every night with my father, who was a theater critic and a playwright. And from an early age, I felt I was going to be a playwright in the footsteps of William Shakespeare and Eugene O'Neill and Tennessee Williams and Arthur Miller. Well, it didn't quite work out that way so far, because I met Laura Sims and learned about professional storytelling, which is so much easier than drama because you can do it all yourself as one individual. I don't know. Now it's 2024. About 36 years ago, I visited India for the first time. and loved it, and did research here regarding various forms of storytelling, especially one epic called the Epic of the Ankle Bracelet. I actually walked in the path of the characters of the story about 300 miles, and I wrote a book about it.
Wow.
And then eventually I and others founded the World Storytelling Institute and the Chennai Storytelling Festival, and here we are.
Thank you. And now you're making your dream happen
Yes, and
of getting your
I've written a
screenplay done.
screenplay for a movie called Words from the Forest, and hoping to go into production this year.
Thank you. And I see Kira, you have your we can see you. So good morning.
Well, I'll have to say that because I'm in Australia, I'll say good afternoon. It's Saturday for me, and I've just finished my yoga class, so you'll have to excuse me. I will be proceeding into my kitchen shortly to prepare lunch. Now, very quickly, I am a storyteller, have been for about 25 years now. Started my storytelling career in Singapore, where I learned from many wonderful teachers. My first one being Kathy Specnioli, who passed away a few months ago, Margaret Reed McDonald, Hen Pulaski, who also passed away a few years ago, and many others who've helped me on my journey to be a storyteller. I've been in Australia for 15 years now. And I just continue telling stories. I love folk tales, especially Asian folk tales.
Thank you.
And
Sonia? Oh,
I'm going to turn my video
Sonia.
off.
Okay, thank you. Sonia, good
Soumya,
morning.
Soumya. Sorry, I'm really looking a mess, but I thought I'd just show you my face and then switch off. Yeah, so I live in Coimbatore now. This is south of India, closer to Chennai. Not really close, but okay. Somewhere in the same state, you can say that. And I moved here from Bangalore, where I lived for about 8 to 9 years. And I was living in Chennai before that. So that's where my connection to Chennai comes in. And I've met Eric some 15 years back, met him and looked up to him as a mentor. And from there, have gone on to do many things. But what I do right now is working in the field of wellness and storytelling. I love using stories for bringing meaning into life, and that's why this workshop attracted me. I really want to. I love wondering at the perspectives a story gives. So where I am now. I believe stories are a tool for transformation and healing. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you. Shakrita?
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Denise. Hi. Hello, Eric. Good morning. And it's so nice to be here. I'm Shukrita Shankaran. I'm from Mumbai, and I love writing poetry. And I'm very keen to delve into the world of therapeutic storytelling. So I do write a few stories for children, which will help them. And I do something called REST, that is resilience and empathy through storytelling for children. And I also basically, I'm interested in narrative medicine and how stories as narratives can help heal. So that's what I do. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Kavita? Kavita? Nina? Oh, there's Nina.
Yeah,
Hello,
good
good
morning.
morning.
I'm Meena Girish. I was in Delhi before for 16 years back. I was working as a school librarian. Now I shifted to my hometown, Trivandrum, Kerala. I'm into taking baby steps in storytelling because I love to tell story for children. Especially, I'm doing storytellings for neurodivergent kids, and I'm into updating myself by learning different genres of storytelling, and also I am interested in writing books. So this is about me.
Thank you. It's very nice to meet you. And Kavita, good morning. Kavita?
Kavita, you have to turn your mic on.
Yeah. So, hello, Eric. Hi, Dennis.
Hi.
So, hi. It's been my 8 months journey as a storyteller, and Eric has been one of my mentors in teaching me storytelling for adults. I do storytelling for adults and for children. So, it's a start journey for me, and I'm learning from all you people. Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you. Thank you, everybody, for sharing about yourselves. Now, this workshop may be something that you're already familiar with, or it might be something that's new, but I hope that it is, for those of you who are familiar with this, that it's a nice refresher about looking at things deliberately in different ways.
That's it,
So
darling.
to get started,
5 minutes.
uh, is that Kira? Kira, can you mute
I'm
your Kiran? Thank you. Thank you. So what are critical lenses? Critical lenses are frameworks that offer different approaches or viewpoints to examining the themes, symbols, characters, and cultural contexts that are present in narratives, allowing for deeper insights and broader understanding. So what I would like to do is I am going to paste this in, let me see if I can do this. Drat. Let me see here. I am going to screen share this screen with you. Okay, so it's up here. I'm also going to see, I had wanted to put this in the chat, but it's not letting me do it. Can you see the screen okay? That shows historical lens
Yes,
up at the
yes,
top.
we can, Denise.
Okay.
We can.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, so here are several critical lenses. Each one of them offers a unique perspective that can hone our understanding of narratives and their significance in shaping individual and collective consciousness. Definitions of each of them can vary, but this list should serve to give everyone an idea of how they might be used in analysis of texts and what they say about the writers and context in which they were created. So what I'd like to do is have us do a group reading. Now you can see the screen that's up here, and perhaps we can have each person read one of the historical lenses to get an idea. I don't know how you see each other on the screen, so I'm just going to call out and ask each person to read one. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Yes,
So
sure.
I'm going to say, okay, great. So Nina, do you want to start us off and read historical lens?
I need to sing a song first.
What?
Yeah, I'll read. I'll read. Okay.
Thank you.
Historical lens. A historical lens examines stories and myths within their historical context, considering the time period, social norms, cultural practices, and political events that influence their creation. So, this lens helps uncover the historical significance of narrative and their relevance, specific historical moments or movements.
Okay,
Should-
thank you. Thank you. Can someone read psychoanalytic lens, please?
I'd be happy to.
Shakrita?
Kieran,
Great. Thank you.
psycho.
Shakrita?
Oh,
I don't know. I'm sorry. I saw
Denise,
Karan.
this is Kieran. I'm happy to
Oh,
read.
okay, great. Thank you.
Psychoanalytic lens. A psychoanalytic lens explores the psychological dimensions of stories and myths, delving into the subconscious motivations, desires, and fears of characters and their creators. Drawing on psychoanalytic theories, such as those of Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, this lens examines symbolism, dreams, and archetypes to uncover deeper layers of meanings within narratives.
Thank you. Would someone please read the feminist lens?
I'll be happy to.
Okie dokie.
A feminist lens analyzes stories and myths through the lens of gender, power dynamics and representations of femininity and masculinity. This lens examines how gender roles, stereotypes, and inequalities are reflected in narratives, as well as how female characters are portrayed and marginalized within some traditional storytelling conventions.
Thank you. Would someone like to read the Marxist lens?
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead.
Thank you.
Marxist lens. A Marxist lens views stories and myths through the framework of social, class, economic systems, and power structures. This lens explores how narratives reflect and perpetuate class struggles, economic inequality, and ideological conflicts, as well as how they may challenge or subvert dominant capitalist narratives.
Thank you. Can I get someone to read post-colonial lens?
Yes, I could read that.
Thank you.
Post-colonial lens. A post-colonial lens examines stories and myths from the perspectives of colonized people, highlighting issues of colonialism, imperialism, and cultural hegemony. This lens interrogates representations of race, ethnicity, and colonial otherness in narratives, as well as the ways in which indigenous or marginalized voices are silenced or misrepresented.
Thank you. And we have a structural lens and reader response lens. Has everyone had a chance to read one of these?
Yes, but if you would like us to
Priyanka?
read the other two,
I can
good,
go
I
for a
don't.
structuralist lens.
Okay, we have Priyanka. Can you read that
Yeah,
for
I'm
the
Priyanka only.
structuralist?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
Priyanka.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Structuralist lens. A structuralist lens focuses on the underlying structures and systems of meaning within stories and myths, drawing on the theories of linguist Ferdinand de Saussure and anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss. This lens analyzes narrative elements such as plot, symbolism, and binary oppositions to uncover underlying patterns and universal themes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, I'm going to go ahead. There's the reader response lens, which means when you read something, the impact that text or narrative has for you, the way that it is affecting you with your beliefs and emotions and psychologically. I'm going to go ahead and skip through that. One that I would like us to focus on through this workshop is the eco criticism lens, which apparently I had a typo in there. An eco criticism lens or eco criticism examines literature and culture through environmental perspectives, exploring human nature relationships, ecological concerns, and portrayal of landscapes, animals, and ecosystems, fostering environmental awareness and advocacy. And I think that this one is probably newer than many of the others, probably about 20 years old, I'm going to say, but it's very important, especially as so many of us now work for climate change, is to look at things of what the relationships are with the environment. And also, part of this, which I would like to add in here, is that eco-criticism also deals with the complex nature of wildness. So the idea of wildness takes on many different aspects as something to avoid and also something to escape into, something that is an escape from the everyday mad rush and pressures that we deal with. And wildness also can be looked at as something that is both internal for emotional chaos that we may have going on inside of us, as well as the external and things that are affecting us. So the eco-critical lens has various different aspects to it. And that's something to think about depending on the texts or stories that you're looking at. Now, for the most part, this workshop is an exercise of critical analysis of text. One reason that it's such a valuable tool is that it leads us to empathize with the other, even when the other is ourselves, and to put ourselves in their shoes. I've selected 3 texts that you might be familiar with so that we can apply some of these strategies to it, or at least to consider these texts according to a critical lens. First, I'd like us to look at Lewis Carroll's The Walrus and the Carpenter. I'm going to paste it into the chat, or I was going to paste it into the chat. Let me stop the screen share and get that for us. So bear with me a second. And I'll just keep my fingers crossed that the chat will allow this to go in there, which it didn't for the first bit.
Denise, you could send it to me and I could put it up on the internet if you want.
Okay, I'm going to, well, I can screen share it, but I just thought it might have been be easier for everyone through, actually, what is the best way for me to do that, Eric?
The screen share sounds like a good idea.
All right, so I'll do that. I would like everyone to have an opportunity to be able to read it, though, for a few minutes after.
Well, if you send me the
So-
file, I'll put it on the internet and send everyone the link within a few minutes.
Well, again, what is the best way for me to do that? Through an email?
Yes,
Okay.
a file
right, well,
a file attached to an email.
Okay. First, all right. I apologize for this interruption. I have a little bit of a laggy, slow computer at this moment. So everyone, drink your coffee for this moment of me finding these things to get them over there. Okay. Okay, Eric, I just sent that to you. You should have it any minute. And now in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and screen share this. And here we go. Give me 1 second to get myself back to where I was. Okay, so now what I'm going to ask is that you read this to yourselves while I read it aloud. And this is The Walrus and the Carpenter by Lewis Carroll. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. And this is odd because it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining sulkily because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. It's very rude of him, she said, to come and spoil the fun. The sea was wet as wet could be. The sands were dry as dry. You could not see a cloud because no cloud was in the sky. No birds were flying overhead. There were no birds to fly. The walrus and the carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only cleared away, they said, it would be grand. If 7 maids with 7 mops swept it for half a year, you suppose, the walrus said, that they could get it clear. I doubt it, said the carpenter, and shed a bitter tear. Oh, oysters, come and walk with us, the walrus did beseech. A pleasant walk, a pleasant talk along this briny beach. But we cannot do with more than 4 to give a hand to each. The eldest oyster looked at him, but never a word he said. The eldest oyster winked his eye and shook his heavy head, meaning to say he did not choose to leave the oyster bed. But 4 young oysters hurried up, all eager for the treat. Their coats were brushed, their faces washed, their shoes were clean and neat. And this was odd, because, they hadn't any feet. 4 other oysters followed them, and yet another 4, and thick and fast they came at last. And more and more and more, all hopping through the frothy waves and scrambling to the shore. The walrus and the carpenter walked on a mile or so, and then they rested on a rock conveniently low, and all the little oysters stood and waited in a row. The time has come, the walrus said, to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings. But wait a bit, the oysters cried, before we have our chat, for some of us are out of breath and all of us are fat. No hurry, said the carpenter. They thanked him much for that. A loaf of bread, the walrus said, is what we chiefly need. Pepper and vinegar besides are very good indeed. Now, if you're ready, oysters dear, we can begin to feed. But not on us, the oysters cried, turning a little blue. After such kindness, that would be a dismal thing to do. The night is fine, the walrus said. Did you admire the view? It was so good of you to come, and you are very nice. The carpenter said nothing but, cut us another slice. I wish you weren't quite so deaf. I've had to ask you twice. It seems a shame, the walrus said, to play them such a trick, after we've brought them out so far and made them trot so quick. The carpenter said nothing but, the butter's spread too thick. I weep for you, the walrus said. I deeply sympathize. With sobs and tears, he sorted out those of largest size, holding his pocket handkerchief before his streaming eyes. Oh, oysters, said the carpenter, you've had a pleasant run. Shall we be trotting home again? But answer came there none, and this is scarcely odd, because they'd eaten every one. Now, what I'd like to do is to ask you just to take a couple of minutes to review the poem and just consider for a moment this poem from an eco-critical perspective. And think about how, looking at it from nature's point, how that is influencing your impression or understanding of the poem, and how people or humans are represented here. And finally, think about how might this poem be used to illustrate an issue of social justice today. So can we do that and just give everybody, 5 or 6 minutes just to peruse through the poem and see what you come up with? Eric, is everyone able now to see the poem?
Yes, I've the email that you've sent to me with the poem in the email, I've made it into a PDF file and I put it on the internet, and the link is in the chat section. So people can
Okay, thank you.
just click on that link.
Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share since everyone, I'm hoping, has access otherwise. So just take a few minutes and see what you think about this poem and what is reflected in it.
Is the link opening for people?
May I ask, what is the lens through which we have to see the poem? Any particular lens?
Yes, I'm asking you to look at it through an eco-criticism, looking at how the environment is represented here in relation to the characters who are in there, basically almost like a fable where they are representing the perspective of the humans, which would be the walrus and the carpenter, the relationship with nature.
Thank you.
What I'm going to do is just set a timer for myself here.
Denise,
Yes.
we're about halfway through the session. Another 45 minutes.
And I am, yes, I have a timer. I have my Google timing.
No, don't
thing
say
to
that
give
word.
Everybody 5 minutes. I know. So we'll be hearing that. And in the meantime, I'm sending you over the next selection. Okay.
Should I put that on the internet too?
Yes.
Okay.
So that'll be there for you in a minute.
Just to let everyone know, if Denise says a certain word, a certain artificial assistant will come into action. And sometimes we want to let sleeping dogs lie. So don't say the word.
I feel like 1984, right?
No, 1984 is not the word.
I consider her my friend.
Oh, how sad.
She helps me.
Well, okay, I've received your next email. Very good.
Stop. Stop. Stop.
Okay, Denise, the second piece of writing that you've sent to me is the link is also in the chat section.
Okay. And my timer friend went off. So I'm going to ask if I can have some feedback from those of you who are here about your any thoughts that you've had about this poem with regard to an eco-critical perspective, how the environment is treated in this poem.
Can I, Nina? May I answer? Nina, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So when I went through this poem, if I connect it with today's scenario regarding environment, what we do is normally when people go out, when they go out for travel or anything, littering around and pollution, that's what came into my mind when the oysters were thanking the person, and also about the sun trying to help the moon when he was sulky and the moon was not liking it. So the mindset of people, of when somebody tries to help, they feel that what their importance is being taken away. And when we go down the poem, it's all about that I could connect us with the pollution and other things that we are doing. A lesson to all of us, what happens to the living things that live beneath the ocean.
Thank you. Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment?
Yes, I'd like to say something.
Yes.
Well, I felt that one of the themes that came to me was about greed, about how, we are so, because of the human greed today, we are wanting more of everything, more oil, more, we are trying to diminish the resources of the world to satisfy our own needs. And that's what came across to me, that how we are sort of yes, how we are sort of, trying to, almost steal it, almost like grab it, from nature, and how because of that we're moving away from nature, and in one way, moving away from nature is also you moving away from humanity in some sense, and that came across as a carpenter. The carpenter is so almost like cold-blooded. He doesn't feel any remorse. He feel, he wants to. He doesn't mind eating the oysters, and he wants to he's just concerned about buttering his slice of bread and having it. So there is no looking back for him. And so I felt that greed is a very prominent theme. And, there are things like how the sun was shining at night. It's an odd thing to happen. The clouds not being there. So how suddenly everything that's beautiful, even the birds, not, there were no birds flying. It showed us how beauty also is being diminished today, how we're cutting trees, how we are moving away. And it reminds me of all these, the carpenter especially reminds me of all these, today's leaders who are not really concerned about preserving the resources of the world. And they don't know where we are heading, which is pretty serious in terms of climate change and global warming and everything. But nothing is being done about it. In fact, people are just towing the line, like, and they use oysters. I feel bad for the oysters because, I mean, they're all coated, they're all cleaned up, and they're all walking together with the walrus and the carpenter. But then, they are at the receiving end, they're being all eaten up. So it's like the human race, I feel, in some way, that how we are just in this whole rat race of doing things, and we are sort of getting, we don't know that it's going to harm us only in the long run in some way. So that's what I felt.
Thank you. Thank you. Would anyone else like to share? Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly on this. And this is one of my favorite poems. And one of the things with this, with looking at it and thinking of it through the critical lens, is it focuses one to actually ask these questions. This this poem has been done in movies, cartoons, and it's looked at as it's funny. It's a funny thing because it goes by so fast, and that's the intent of it, and yet it's not funny. It's a sad kind of thing. Did looking at this in this particular way make a difference for anyone in how they may have understood this poem before?
If I may just make a comment, this is Kiran.
Sure.
Um, when you had that very useful different lenses, it also occurred to me that they're not mutually exclusive. And what we see from what we chose, to look at from this eco view can also be seen from other views as well. But just focusing on this bit, the first word which I put on the chat was it's trickery when the oysters were invited to come and walk with them. However, I also see wisdom and hope from the old oyster who said, I'll stay here. So, all is not lost. So, and I think those were the two messages that came through for me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, well, let's move on to the next one. Um, let's just see here. Let me get my bearings for a second. Okay, the second story that we're going to look at is called Hateful Flax Spinning, and there are many different versions of this. This is by the Brothers Grimm, and Eric has shared it through a PDF link as he did with the previous one, and I'm going to go ahead and share it because I also have it on a screen share, though I don't know what is easier to look at. So again, I'm going to ask you just to read it along with me as I read it, because I think that's possibly the best way to do this. Okay, so this is Hateful Flax Spinning. Can everyone see it and have what they need to follow along? Pretty good? Okay. In former times, there lived a king who liked nothing better in all the world than having flax spun. The queen and his daughters had to spend the entire day spinning, and he was very angry if he could not hear the spinning wheels humming. One day he had to go abroad, and before taking leave, he gave the queen a great chest filled with flax and said, "This must all be spun by the time I return." The princesses were very concerned and started to cry. "If we are to spin all this, we'll have to sit here the whole day and won't be able to get up at all." The queen said, "Fear not, I will help you." Now, in this country, there were 3 terribly ugly old maids. The first one had such a large lower lip that it hung down over her chin. The second one had a forefinger on her right hand that was so broad and thick that one could have made 3 normal fingers from it. The third one had a broad, flat foot as wide as half a kitchen table. The queen sent for the 3, and on the day that the king was to return, she had them all sit in her parlor. She gave them her spinning wheels and had them spin. She told each one how she was to answer the king's questions. When the king arrived, he was pleased to hear the humming of the wheels from afar and prepared to praise his daughters. He entered the parlor, and when he saw the disgusting old maid sitting there, he was at first repulsed. But then he approached the first one and asked her where she had gotten the terribly large lip. "From licking, from licking." Then he asked the second one where she had gotten the thick finger. "From twisting the thread, from twisting the thread and wrapping it around," she said, and at the same time letting the thread run around her finger a few times. Finally, he asked the third one where she had gotten the thick foot. "From peddling, from peddling." When the king heard this, he ordered the queen and the princesses to never again touch a spinning wheel. and thus they were delivered from their misery. And so with this story, give me one
Denise,
second here. Yes.
do you think
You-
peddling refers to, standing outside and selling something, or peddling a bicycle?
No, it's pedaling the trottle on the spinning wheel.
Ah, thank you.
So they all have to do with the spinning wheel.
I see.
So, what I would like to ask, and this goes back to what was just mentioned a few minutes ago, that each of these things can be looked at through various different lenses. And with this particular story, there are various lenses to use. And I'd like you just to take a moment and think about what those lenses might be that you might view this story through. Does anyone have any particular viewpoints that grab you as to how you might look at and explore this story?
Well, of
use
course,
as a jumping
of course, the feminist lens.
Absolutely. Any others? Eric, would you like to? Oh, I'm sorry. Someone else is on there.
Yeah, I was saying the foolishness conquered with some cleverness.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
The foolishness conquered with cleverness.
Oh, explain, please.
I thought the king was foolish in terms of in expecting his daughters to, to punish them actually in making them do what he wanted. And their mother was smart enough to spun a intelligent thread around it and make sure that he gets out of his foolishness.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other comments on this particular story?
Well, there's also a historical lens where we have, the king as the all powerful, and, what he says goes. And you also have, as Eric rightly pointed out, the feminist lens where the queen was clever enough to outwit him.
Yes, this story actually has so many different layers to it. With it has implications to the economy, to the historical, because textiles were so very important, to the feminist or patriarchal lenses, and also even with the Marxist, with the class systems, because even the queen and the princesses had to do work within the context. So everyone had roles to do. And so again, and everyone is right, and there's more that can come into here, that there are a variety of ways to look at different stories, to take on arguments, and to develop examples of things for social justice, and just to be able to debate things even with oneself, to be able to get many different viewpoints in before making decisions, which in the world today, it's good to be able to do critical thinking and to explore different possibilities and viewpoints. Now, our third story.
Oh, Denise, could I interject?
Sure, please do.
Yes, regarding history, as you've kind of implied, the history of technology is involved. So that would be a lens. And really what you're presenting here is the importance of a multidisciplinary approach. You know, in academia, the reality has been divided into all these different academic disciplines: sociology, anthropology, history. But we all know that reality is a WHOLE. It's a whole that has been divided by Western academia into different subjects. So you are presenting different subjects, but obviously they're all unified.
They're all unified, and every story that we hear, every story that we experience, the stories that we live, there are many ways of reflecting on them and reinterpreting them and broadening the way that we see their effects on other people, going back and forth. So absolutely, absolutely. I wish that I had sent this over to you. So I am sending the third story. And the third story that I have for us is The Frog Prince, which many of you may be familiar with, which is also taken from the Grimm version. So let me just...
There are two major versions of that I'm aware of, so I'm interested to know which version you're going to send.
This is from the 1812 collection of theirs. So let's see. And I thank everybody for your patience while I do this. Okay. So here we go. Do we have enough people now, Eric, to have people go into groups?
No. I mean,
Okay.
there are 12 people in the session, but only you and two others of us have our cameras on.
Okay. All right. So let's how about if with this one that we each take a paragraph and read through? Would that work for everybody? Because I would like us all to participate, and I think that this might be a way to achieve that. What do you think? Eric?
It's possible. I think, you know, it would
Or
work.
everyone
But
can read
I
it.
just wanted to tell you something about doing this kind of thing in countries where English is not the first language. For some people, especially children, they if you ask them to read in English publicly, they'll have a hard time. So just
Okay,
keep that in
so
mind. I think everyone in this group now would be fine, but just keep it in mind that if there were children here, they would be tense about reading it out loud in English.
well, certainly. Well, I can read it and you can follow along. You can read it. Let me ask you, Eric.
Yeah.
What would you like me to do? Would you like me to read it aloud and have people follow along? Have everyone read it silently to themselves, and then we'll come back in and talk about it? Or
I want to read the last two paragraphs because that's the part that I'm especially interested in.
Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to read the first two paragraphs and ask other people to jump in. How about that? All right.
Okay,
And
I'm going to post it in the
we go that way.
I'm going to post it in the chat in about 10 seconds.
Okay, and I'm going to share it on the screen. So there we go. Okay, and I think everybody's in here now. I just admitted Nina. Okay. So I hope everybody's situated. I hope that you can see the screen. Oh, we have someone else coming in. Oops. Someone else coming in. And here we go. The Frog Prince. Long ago, when wishes often came true, there lived a king whose daughters were all handsome, but the youngest was so beautiful that the sun himself, who was seeing everything, was bemused every time he shone over her because of her beauty. Near the royal castle, there was a great dark wood, and in the wood, under an old linden tree, was a well. And when the night was hot, the king's daughter used to go forth into the wood and sit by the brink of the cool well. And if the time seemed long, she would take out a golden ball and throw it up and catch it again. And this was her favorite pastime. Now, would someone else like to pick it up from here?
Yes, I can go ahead.
Go ahead.
Now it happened one day that the golden ball, instead of falling back into the maiden's little hand, which had set it aloft, dropped to the ground near the edge of the well and rolled in. The king's daughter followed it with her eyes as it sank. But the well was deep, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Then she began to weep, and she wept and wept as if she could never be comforted. And in the midst of her weeping, she heard a voice saying to her, "What ails you, king's daughter? Your tears would melt a heart of stone." And when she looked to see where the voice came from, there was nothing but a frog stretching his thick, ugly head out of the water. "Oh, is it you, old waddler?" said she. "I weep because my golden ball has fallen into the well." Never mind. Someone else?
I can read. Never mind, do not weep, answered the frog. I can help you, but what will you give me if I fetch up your ball again? Whatever you like, dear frog, she said. Any of my clothes, my pearls and jewels, or even the golden crown that I wear. Your, your clothes, your pearls and jewels, and your golden crown are not for me, answered the frog. But if you would love me and have me for your companion and playfellow, and let me sit by you at table and eat from your plate and drink from your cup and sleep in your little bed, if you would promise all this, then would I dive below the water and fetch you your golden ball again. Anyone else would like to read?
Yeah,
I can go next.
I'll. May I?
Yeah. Yes, sure.
Oh, yes, she answered. I will promise it all, whatever you want, if you will only get me my ball again. But she thought to herself, what nonsense he talks, as if he could do anything but sit in the water and croak with the other frogs, or could possibly be anyone's companion. But the frog, as soon as he heard her promise, drew his head under the water and sank down out of sight. But after a while, he came to the surface again with the ball in his mouth, and he threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was overjoyed to see her pretty plaything again, and she caught it up and ran off with it. "Stop, stop," cried the frog. "Take me up too. I cannot run as fast as you." But it was of no use, for croak after her as he might, she would not listen to him, but made haste home. and very soon forgot all about the poor frog, who had to betake himself to his well again.
Yeah, I can go next.
Yeah, thank you.
The next day, when the king's daughter was sitting at table with the king and all the court and eating from her golden plate, there came something pitter patter up the marble stairs. And then there came a knocking at the door and a voice crying, "Youngest king's daughter, let me in." And she got up and ran to see who it could be. But when she opened the door, there was the frog sitting outside. Then she shut the door hastily and went back to her seat, feeling very uneasy. The king noticed how quickly her heart was beating and said, "My child, what are you afraid of? Is there a giant standing at the door ready to carry you away?" "Oh no," answered she, "no giant, but a horrid frog." "And what does the frog want?" asked the king. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. I'll read. Okay?
Go ahead.
Oh, dear father, she answered, when I was sitting by the well yesterday and playing with my golden ball, it fell into the water, and while I was crying for the loss of it, the frog came and got it again for me on the condition that I would let him be my companion. But I never thought that he could leave the water and come after me. But now there he is outside the door, and he wants to come into me. And then they all heard him knocking the second time and crying, "Youngest daughter of the king, open to me by the well water what you promised to me. Youngest king's daughter, now open to me." The king said, "That which you have promised, you must perform. So go now and let him in," he said to his daughter. So she went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in, following at her heels until she reached her chair. Then he stopped and cried. Then the frog stopped and cried, "Let me up to sit next to you." But she delayed doing so until the king ordered her to do so. When the frog was on the chair, he wanted to get on the table. And there he sat and said, "Now push your golden plate a little near so that we may eat together." So she did, but everybody might see how unwilling she was, and the frog feasted heartily, but every morsel seemed to stick in her throat. "I've had enough now," said the frog at last, "and as I am tired, you must carry me to your room and make ready for me your silken bed, and we will lie down together and go to sleep." Then the king's daughter began to weep and was afraid of the cold frog, that nothing would satisfy him but that he must sleep in her pretty clean bed. Now the king grew angry with his daughter, saying, "That which you have promised in your time of necessity, you must now perform." So she picked up the frog with her finger and thumb, carried him upstairs, and put him in a corner on the ground. And when she had laid down to sleep, he came creeping up on her bed. And he said, "I am tired and I want to sleep as much as you. Take me up, or I will tell your father." Then she felt beside herself. She felt beside herself with rage. But picking him up, she picked him up and threw him with all her strength against the wall, crying, "Now you will be quiet, you horrid frog." But as he fell, he ceased to be a frog and became all at once a prince with beautiful, kind eyes. And it came to pass that, with her father's consent, they became bride and bridegroom. Next.
And he told her how a wicked witch had bound him by her spells, and how no one but she alone could have released him, and that they two would go together to his father's kingdom. And there came to the door a carriage drawn by 8 white horses with white plumes on their heads and with golden harness. And behind the carriage was standing faithful Henry, the servant of the young prince. Now, Faithful Henry had suffered such care and pain when his master was turned into a frog that he had been obliged to wear 3 iron bands over his heart to keep it from breaking with trouble and anxiety. When the carriage started to take the prince to his kingdom, and faithful Henry had helped them both in, he got up behind and was full of joy at his master's deliverance. Eric?
Oh, you want me to read again?
You said you wanted to read the last 2
No,
paragraphs.
no, I read the part that I wanted. You please keep going.
Oh, and when they had gone a part of the way, the prince heard a sound at the back of the carriage as if something had broken. And he turned round and cried, Henry, the wheel must be breaking. But Henry answered, the wheel does not break. 'Tis the band round my heart, that to lessen its ache when I grieved for your sake, I bound round my heart. Again, and yet once again there was the same sound, and the prince thought it must be the wheel breaking. But it was the breaking of the other bands from faithful Henry's heart, because he was so relieved and happy. The end. Da-da, da-da.
Denise, might you come out of screen share?
I'm coming out, and now I am out of screen share, and this is the last story that I had selected for us to talk about. And I am wondering what your impression was. My impression with this, yes, Eric.
Go ahead. No,
please
first
do.
tell yours.
I usually save the last to go because I don't want to in any way diminish anyone else's ideas. But this particular story, I've told it in 2 different ways. I've told it as a very happy fairy tale, isn't this wonderful? But I've also told it from the feminist perspective, with how this princess was treated, what she is valued for, and where her rank is, or where her status falls within the great scheme of the between the king and the frog, that even the frog has more control and power than she does in this instance.
Do you ascribe that to both the frog and the king being males?
I do, and actually also the sun. From the very beginning of it, when the sun shines on her and is bemused by her, I think of the sun rays beating upon her, so that her only recourse is to go into the forest, to sit in the shade of the linden tree by the pool, where she is out of the purview of the sun himself, who is up in the sky. And I think how horrible an existence it is where one's favorite pastime is to throw a ball up in the air and catch it and nothing else.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the end. One's favorite pastime is
that the favorite pastime is simply to throw a ball up in the air and catch it.
that was one of my favorite pastimes as a child.
But we don't know that she's necessarily a child, and for that to be the only thing to do as a favorite,
Sure.
to me, it's a very sad story. To me,
Huh.
I just look at it in that way. I haven't looked at it necessarily with an eco-critical perspective. So if anyone looked at it in that way as we were going through it, I would really love to hear thoughts on that, because I can see that here too. But for me, because I often look at things from a feminist perspective and the patriarchal context, that's where my head first goes. And I think that it depends on where we are in our own lives, those things that trigger us. So these are triggering points too. But I would love to hear what everyone else thought.
Yes, well, let me say first, we could also look at this through the perspective of play. If not children's play, play in general and playing with balls. The element of the story that's most interesting to me is that she picks him up and throws him against the wall. Denise, that's domestic violence. There are different versions of it. Sometimes she just kisses him, or different things happen. But in the version, which is a very authentic version, where she picks him up and throws him against the wall, that is female rage. And the interesting thing is that it works out. It frees him from his curse. So what do we make of that?
What do we make of that?
So, may I go? Yeah.
Yes.
So what I think about her throwing the frog to the wall is actually she's giving him a big come to his senses, and probably that's how he came to become the prince, because he was in a curse. So that, let's forget the curse, but this part definitely shows that she had enough. She wanted to take control of her situation, because till now she was being told to do what has to be done by her father. The frog was also bullying her, though the second part of me also says that he was not bullying her. He had asked for this promise, and he was just very fairly asking for what he had done for her. I mean, she was to repay it in this way. So if you look at it, at that point of time when she threw him, she was fed up and she wanted him to come back to his senses, that enough is enough. Now let me take control of my life.
Yeah, but perpetrators of domestic violence often say, "Oh, I just wanted to bring that person to that person's senses." And it's not an excuse. There's no excuse for abuse. But in this story, somehow it's correct.
Because
There's
he becomes a
also-
prince.
It's also interesting with Henry, because we don't often in these stories see another male character who is caring and loving of the prince. Yes, Nina.
Yeah, I would like to say very often we judge people without knowing exactly what is the reason why they are, because we often say that never judge a book by its cover. So that is what I felt, because the princess got her work done. She promised, and then later she thought it's just a sticky frog, so I can just keep away from that. So the reason behind the frog helping her and his appearance was not known to her. So it's not appropriate to come to conclusion before knowing what exactly is the reason. That's what I feel.
So if we looked at this then, even if we looked at this with an eco-critical viewpoint, we have got the sun in there, we've got the escape with the linden tree, and with the frog is then lower here. It's not that with how badly the princess is being treated, or that she has to fall in line and listen to people who can tell her what to do. That frog being thrown away, what does that mean? What is that saying about the relationship there?
Again, I think it can be a misunderstanding, or the ego, of course, and the misunderstanding about situation can be one reason why all these things happen. Her throwing away, the agony she has within her, because she's being told to do this and that. So the frustration coming out, and the frog on the other side, desperate to come out of the nutshell where he is. So both the sides, they are doing what they wanted to prove, that
is there another angle where we are probably treating animals with a certain, I mean, we feel we are probably empowered to treat animals that way, throw them, I mean, looking at the eco angle of it. And that is one thought that I had. Another thought is the king is also trying to prove that if you give your word to somebody, you have to do it. You can't just because somebody is not beautiful or you suddenly feel that somebody is not worth it. You can't just walk away.
But
I,
the frog, a frog is reminiscent of a certain male body part, and that frog wants to come into her clean virginal bed. I think he's probably overstepping his rights by demanding that. Shukrita, did you have your hand up?
Yes, yes. So, Eric, first of all, two things. One, I would completely agree with you in terms of throwing the frog on the wall as being sort of parallel to abuse, because I feel today, in the name of feminism, a lot of things are just, they go in another end of the continuum where everything women do is okay and they have their reasons for doing it, but I don't think there is. We have to be careful that we don't cross certain boundaries regardless of it and feeling that we are the inferior race or whatever. Yeah, I mean, there is no excuse, like you said, and I completely agree with that. Man or woman. Secondly, I feel that, this story kind of reminds me of like how and like it's a frog. Why a frog? First of all, it makes if you told this to a child would say a frog is ugly. So the whole concept of ugliness, something being so like the way the princess also treats him, it's an ugly little frog, a little small thing. It's small in size. It's so diminished. Like why are we attributing so much like sort of like inferiority to an animal? Everything is beautiful in this world, but if you tell this to some, like, for example, if you tell it to a child, they may say, oh, yuck, a frog. Like, we don't want that. We want people to love and embrace everything under the sun, all animals, all reptiles, everything. They have a place to be. So I feel that, I mean, we should not judge a frog as being ugly. And this sort of story puts it in that perspective. Oh, this is not good or this is ugly. And what is good or beautiful? But the princess is on the other contrast is the princess is beautiful, but look at her. She did not make do her promise, So is beauty so good then? What is the use of your beauty if you're not going to keep your promise? What's the use of that? Rather go for a frog.
Yeah, I don't know if that's common feeling that frogs are ugly, but frogs are slimy. And you don't really want a slimy thing like that in your clean virginal bed.
We also have to see that this frog was given permission by the king.
Yes. But
And
you can
so
say
she
that
was given
you can say
away.
that he's teaching a life lesson to his daughter that you have to keep your word.
And yet, on the other hand, it's almost like a kick the dog thing, kick the dog kind of thing, where when the king is no longer seeing what's going on, now this princess is going to pick that frog up and slam him against the wall, which is something she could not do when her father was present.
Yeah, she does it directly after the frog threatens to report her behavior to her father.
So how is it that throwing him against the wall breaks the spell?
Don't try this at home.
Oh gosh.
Divya.
I know that we're running. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Divya.
So what came to mind when the first thing that comes to mind when we say frog is inherently because of our school is that, to me at least, it brought metamorphosis into. The first thing that I thought was metamorphosis. So obviously it is transformation. And probably Denise also picked the story like that, is what I thought. So this is a sort of pressure release, is what I'm thinking. The princess was, she was not herself when she was acting on behest of her father or on behest of the frog. She's listening to them in some way. So she's not herself. She's not in her full control of what she's doing. So it's when you have to do actions according to what you think, you need to be in full control. So the pressure release is what she's doing when she releases the frog. And for the frog too, it is a sort of pressure release. He's just letting go and becoming the prince. So both ways, it is a sort of transformation that is happening, is what I felt.
Do you think that's what it is? I mean, she has now had him in her bed. And do you think that's what it is? That it's the transformation, that now she has found her power to where she's like equal to him, or has a voice, or
Having a voice, yes. But having him in the bed was more of a reluctant action. It wasn't out of her willingness that she had it. So, which is what I am trying to interpret here, that when you do it willingly and out of wanting to do it with your wholeheartedness, then there is a sort of you open up. You just feel nice about it in some way. Nice or not nice, I would say you feel free, kind of. So that is what happened in that moment, is what I'm reading.
Okay,
Also, if I may add, sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yes, well, taking this forward, it just brought about a thought that the princess could only accept the frog in the form of a prince. So the body is of a prince, a beautiful, good-looking, handsome little prince. But what if inside he's still a frog? So, I mean, that's how we all are. We have our own, internal animal or plant sort of patterns and behavior. So he could be still a frog inside, but she could accept him now. The whole concept of accepting the frog now is only because he's transformed into a body of a prince that she can now accept.
Very good. Okay, I apologize, Denise and everyone. We have to stop this session. Denise, it was a brilliant workshop. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
in the terms I think in, this different critical lenses is about the multidisciplinary approach to story, which or the multidisciplinary approach to anything, which is becoming more popular in academia, actually. So thank you so much for the workshop, and I apologize for before that I kind of teased you about your virtual assistant. If your virtual assistant has assisted you to put this workshop together, she's done a great job. My hat is off to her.
She makes me laugh, is what she does. But I thank you all very, very much. I do hope that you enjoyed this workshop. I did enjoy putting it together, and I loved hearing the feedback because I learned something through this. So thank you. Thank you very, very much. And I hope to enjoy many of the workshops that will be coming up through the festival. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm stopping the recording now.